Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And also, some of you folks ask about how to join for memberships, and the easiest way is probably on your laptop. So go to the Empire Media YouTube page on your laptop. That's where you'll see the word join. Click on there, go from there. And I'll be doing private Zoom chats every week throughout the season and bringing on players or mostly ex-players, I would say, because I'm not bringing on current players, but I will bring on ex-players when I can. And so, I had Santana Moss on, had Logan Paulson on, probably have him on again, just to kind of give you guys some more insight into what's going on. So anyways, take advantage of that. That's for another time. So today, I'm going to be joined by ESPN's Jordan Raanan as we discuss the upcoming matchup of the Giants and the Commanders. Now, I also got Jordan's opinion on how is Washington's roster viewed from an outside perspective, someone else in the NFC East who has covered games against his team, and also how is Jaden Daniels perceived. So, but then a lot of it is what's going wrong with the Giants and just learn about this week's opponent. That's what I'm trying to do here. Get you ready for the game, make you sound smarter, get some insight from somebody who covers the team. Anyway, so stay tuned for that in a minute, but let's get to some things that happened out at the Commanders facility on Thursday. So starting with the news that cornerback Emmanuel Forbes will undergo surgery on his right thumb to repair a torn UCL. Now, he hurt it in the game. I believe it got stuck in somebody's face mask. He did get x-rays after the game. There was a point on Wednesday, Dan Quinn told us that they felt like it was nothing big and that he would be okay. Well, then the more, he practiced with a splint on Wednesday, was limited Thursday. Before practice even ended, the news broke and that he was going to have surgery. So I think it's just something they felt was going to get a little bit better, and it really didn't. The feeling was that it would maybe linger throughout the season and perhaps become a bigger problem down the road. Don't know yet how long he's going to be out. No guarantee of IR. We'll see. Really, we have to wait and see what happens with the surgery. They'll know a lot more post-surgery if he's going to need to go on IR or not. So stay tuned for that. Now, obviously, he did not have his best game for sure. And it's funny because people consistently ask me, like, why is he even on the roster? Because he's still one of their top 5 corners, but also it's almost a $13 million dead money cap hit. But keep in mind, too, this group just got here with him. You guys may have seen what he did under a different regime, and nobody liked that coaching. So how much of it was coaching? How much of it was him? That's what this group needs to find out. And eventually they're going to learn what they learn about who he is, what he can do for them. But that's why, it just gets, it's not that complicated why he's still on the roster. Like, whether or not you think he's any good or going to be any good, they also need to see it for themselves, not view it through the prism of how fans viewed it last year or what happened last year under a different regime, but what can he do this year? And a lot of that goes back to what did they think about him coming out? But he also, the guy has a skill of taking the football away. If he could do that here, that's what they need. He hasn't done that. So that's where we're at with that. How they're going to replace him, have to wait and see. And again, that depends on, do they need to put him on IR or not? Because then maybe you're going to either have to bring someone up or go out and sign a corner. So Noah Igbenogany did come in for him twice when they took Forbes out of the game on Sunday. He's been more of a slot guy. Mike Samerstill is covering the slot. Samerstill is a small guy. And I talked about this, I don't know that I would put him outside. I kind of like him inside, but we'll see what they do there. But again, Igbenogany went in for him. They also have Mike Davis on the roster. I don't know how that's going to play out Sunday, but last week Davis was up and they still went with Igbenogany in there. So we'll see. And then the other thing today, defensive tackle Johnny Newton was limited in practice. He was out. We did see him during the open portion to the media. Limited usually means not much full team. So, I don't know. Listen, I think you should know what it means for Sunday, that it certainly doesn't look good that he'd be able to go unless he can go out there and contribute a little bit. But then do you keep him active if you only think he can play a handful of plays? when you may need that spot for someone who can give you more reps. I don't know, but I do know that it would be kind of asking a lot. I think you'd want to see him go full before you put him back on the field, considering how little he has done in the spring and in the summer. So, as far as football activity. So anyways, that's a couple things there. Today is the day we meet with Joe Witt, the coordinator is Joe Witt Jr., and then Cliff Kingsbury. So for Witt, he gave a long, usually you kind of get right to the Q&A, but some guys like to say stuff first. Bieniemy was like that last year. Dan Quinn is like that. Witt is like that. Cliff Kingsbury, get to the questions. So, but Witt started off with a long chunk of a long quote about what kind of happened the other day, and then looking ahead to the Giants game. So let's go back just a little bit to see, because this is stuff that you have to see improvement in going forward if you want to become a good defense. What I like about him is he's pretty no nonsense. And he did say, one of the things he said is, and I'm paraphrasing here, was like, I don't care that it was game one. You only get 17 opportunities, make the most of it. And I agree with that, because he's like, the standard is the standard. And if you set a low standard, people tend to meet it. But if you set a higher standard, people have to climb to meet it. So I'm always in favor of setting that higher standard regardless. Now, I can sit back and say, listen, it's still the realistic thing here is that it was one game, or the first game after an off season where you didn't have all your starters playing in the preseason. And while you practice, you didn't go some of them didn't go against another team, whatever. So, but for Witt, doesn't matter. And I think that's a good thing. But one thing he said on third down, especially, that was the big issue, third down. So why didn't they get off the field on third down? He broke it down to three things, some of which we talked about. And I talked about in the podcast earlier in the week: communication, leverage, and then the inability to get the quarterback down. You've got, that's a big thing. And there were a number of opportunities they had to do that, and they failed. So the communication, one of the things there is there are some new parts in there, but he felt like it being in a road stadium maybe impacted that, and you have to do a better job communicating. So what he said he's been doing in practice is standing back further away from the ball to try and make sure, so he can hear, said, make sure everybody hears. So he said it wasn't as much that they didn't communicate it, it's that everybody didn't receive it. So the volume maybe was a little bit different. That's something they hadn't, because I'm telling you, in practice this summer, there was a loud chatter on defense, more than you've heard in the past. But when you're in an away stadium, you got to be louder, because they're going to be loud. So that's one thing they felt like was part of the issue. The leverage, it's simple as, if you're inside, you got to stay inside. If you're outside, you got to stay outside. You can't let guys cross your face, et cetera. So if you have inside leverage, you cannot let them get inside. So that was one of the things that he talked about too. And then, those are some of the big things. Finishing on the QB is going to be a big issue. And Daniel Jones, of course, is a guy that they haven't always finished on, because he kills him with his legs at times. So anyways, that's a big point of emphasis this week. Then Kingsbury, one of the things couple of things he talked about, obviously Jaden Daniels, and what he really liked from that game is his competitive spirit. So clearly, and I'm going to get into this on Saturday with the 5 things I think and things I've learned throughout the week leading into that game. It's not all, but my little thing on Saturday is not all about the game. It's about things that you learn throughout the week that can make you a more informed fan and get you ready for that Sunday game. But one of the things is the predetermined aspect for Daniels. I'm going to get into that on Saturday. One play in particular was symbolic of that. So, but what Kingsbury said, some of that's just, a lot of that's just, I would say most of that is just experience. But the other thing, he loved the competitive spirit. He also said that on the touchdown for Daniels, he said it was one of his worst play calls ever. And he said that because on the play, he didn't give him a check on the play. So the call, I think it was a speed option, and there was nothing to check out of. So he had to just take it. And he said he had 3 guys coming at him. He had to cut inside, and he had to cut inside the right, and he scored. But he's like, it was one of his worst play calls ever. So I think to fix that, you could also then give him another check on that particular play. There are plays where they had checks, but maybe on that particular play they did not. So I think that's something that you can look to see, like, do they do that in the future? But I thought that was an interesting thing. And then the other thing he talked about is Austin Eckler and how he feels like he has a lot of juice left, which watching him on some of those runs, I would agree. And I think the hard part is to, when you look at last year, when you get older as a running back, even if you're hurt, people are going to still see you through the prism of an older running back. But in that role, you can play a little bit longer. And that high ankle sprain certainly made a difference. But in the first game, I feel like he did a good job playing, even away from the ball. Some blocks that he had were really good. So good thing for them. So there you go. That's what we got from there. And again, I'll have more in my 5 things I think on Saturday morning. So make sure you click in for that one, because I usually try to get you some pretty good insight into that particular podcast. Anyway, enough blabbering from me. Here's my conversation with ESPN's Jordan Raanan.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
All right, Jordan, it's the 10th annual. The Giants stink, but here comes Washington Week. I think every time we talk, it's the same scenario. And I always get sucked in like there's no way they can lose to Tommy DeVito. There's no way they can lose this game. But they always seem to. Anyways, I want to start with the state of the Giants, because that was not pretty the other day. How were you surprised, or how surprised were you at what happened on Sunday?
Not completely. I didn't expect them to be blown out quite like that, but there were definitely cracks with the Giants this summer that made you concerned about where this team was headed. And I think I had 7 wins, and I probably, that's what I started the summer with, and probably didn't feel great about that. Probably could have knocked it down to, 6 or so after watching them this summer. So the fact that they did lose is not surprising to me. The fact that they looked as poorly as they did, Daniel Jones in the offense, like missing easy throws, like that kind of stuff, the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, where he was just, he had checkdowns where guys were open and he was just missing guys on wide open checkdowns. Like that kind of stuff was a little bit surprising. But again, like there were times this summer, and Daniel Jones remembers coming back from a serious knee injury on top of everything else. There's definitely questions about his confidence. There were times this summer where you're like, you know what? His accuracy hasn't been great. And that's one thing you really didn't worry about him much earlier, in his career. And so all the things that you thought might be a problem turned out to be a problem.
How, first of all, how much was it the Vikings, what they did? Because it sounds like the Giants O-line, which has been revamped a little bit, not really hold up as well. So how much, what were the big factors you think? Was that an issue, or is it more Daniel?
Yeah, I don't think that was the issue that much. The line was okay. I think that's what the Giants offensive line kind of is. They have a bunch of veterans that can get by, right? Their tackles are Andrew Thomas, who's a high-end player, an all-pro caliber player. And then Jermaine Illuminor, who's an average, above average, slightly above average right tackle. So they're in a better shape there these days. It's just, can they get better quarterback play? They couldn't run the ball. I think that was disappointing with the offensive line and with the offense in the game. It didn't really give them any other alternatives. And then the defense played poorly, quite frankly. Kayvon Thibodeau had a 0 tackle day. Yeah. That's not good enough. Brian Burns didn't make the impact the Giants are paying him to make. Now, it's set up. You tell me. It seems like they're set up much better with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau to have a much better day against the Washington Commanders on Sunday. And I expect that defensive line, and Dexter Lawrence was dominant. I expect that defensive line to have a huge, huge day, and it'd be a much different afternoon, at least for the defense.
And that's the one thing to me that'll be interesting to watch, because of what the Giants have done in the past is, under Wink, they blitzed a lot. They didn't blitz. It doesn't sound like they blitzed a whole lot the other day, trying to rely on those front 4.
Well, that's their new. That's what
right.
They're going to play now.
So what were they doing with those front? Is it just one-on-one, go beat them, or is there?
Do they need to? Like, Are their tackles going to be able to stop Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau? And is their
I
interior going
think
to be able
there's,
to stop
I think
Dexter
there's
Lawrence one on
Dexter
one?
Lawrence for like that guy's a stud. Like I really like that guy. I think their tackle's going to have trouble. I think the question for me would be the game planning aspect of it. Whereas with Tampa, because the overloads and all that, they would get confused. So, one thing I would see with Jaden, can he get rid of the ball quicker? Can you offset some of that? Because the pressures, the style of pressures the Bucs send. Yes, I do. I absolutely.
I think it's just going to be line it up and go
right.
one
And I
on
have
one,
questions about
win
that
your
too,
matchup. Like
sure.
that's what
Right.
Shane Bowen's defense is.
Yeah, and
really
for sure, I think there should be concerns about that here. Like, what do you think the concern, like for them facing Jaden Daniels? What do you think the concerns for that will be?
His ability to move in the pocket, or like you said, he's going to have to get the ball out quickly. That's usually not the strength of young quarterbacks. So I do think, that's going to be something the Giants can exploit. But if Jaden Daniels can use his legs and move around, and if they can then set up potential big plays, I think that's where you look at it and say, okay, the Giants might be jumping these short routes thinking that Jaden Daniels is going to try to get the ball out quickly. And the answer to that is, okay, if you're, Washington, maybe you hit him with some double moves, some, slant and goes, stuff like that, where you can then take advantage of perhaps some aggressiveness on the back end, because the Giants secondary is extremely young, unproven, and quite frankly, probably not that good.
This is going to be a fun game because it's just, but
the only difference, John, is that this time it's the Giants doing the Washington thing with the middling, right. We're stuck in no man's land at quarterback,
right.
And it's the Commanders who have we got the nice young quarterback, at least because there's hope for the future. The Giants always had Eli Manning, for 16, 15 years. And then they drafted they thought was their guy in Daniel Jones. So they always look like, okay, at least they have hope at that position. Now it's the Giants. Oh, what are they doing?
Right.
They have their next middling nobody who we know isn't going to be there long term. And Washington, at least you can feel good about that.
Right. And I think that's where, for people here, that's where the hope is. And I don't think Jaden Daniels has given them any reason to not think it's one game, but throughout the spring and practice, what they've seen, what you hear about him, it's all good, but you got to go still do it now. I get that. So, but with the Giants defense, where were the Vikings having the most success? Sam Darnold going back to New York, of course. That's.
Look, they have. I actually, and I'm on record with this before Sunday. I think Sam Darnold's going to have a very good year. I think he's surrounded by an excellent team with great weapons, with a really good offensive line. They have a good running back in Aaron Jones, who's very versatile, can do a lot of things, and a very smart offensive coach. So I actually think we're going to be surprised at the end of the year, be like, yeah, well, Sam Darnold was pretty good that year. Like he's set up for success, especially when TJ Hawkinson comes back for the Vikings. Yeah. So they did a little bit of everything. Play action. I think the Giants could be had, getting the ball out quick, timing routes, taking advantage of. There's a lot of zone defense on the back end. So finding those little spots, quick, get the ball out of your hands. And I think after 2 or 3 drives, the Vikings kind of realized what the Giants were doing and made the adjustments. And you saw Darnold took them on a 99-yard drive. Flew down the field, actually threw a beautiful deep ball to Justin Jefferson. Right. So you could take advantage if you could protect. But that's the thing. This is why I thought it was a little different matchup, because the Vikings, their strength is they have 2 really good tackles. Right. So they matched up, I thought, well against this Giants defense. 2 really good tackles and really good pass catchers, receivers. Right. Justin Jefferson's amazing. And then Jordan Addison before he got hurt as well. So I thought it was a good matchup for them. Those guys against the Giants cornerbacks was no match. Those guys, those offensive tackles could then limit the Giants' edge rush. Now, they couldn't really stop Dexter Lawrence, but overall, that's how they had success. I'm not sure Washington, the matchup is as good for Washington, because I look at it and I think, okay, Kayvon Thibodeau, first of all, is under pressure because he had 0 sacks and got caught yelling at me on camera, or no questioning me on camera. So I'm sure people are all over him. I know people are all over him in social media. He's going to come out. I think he's going to have a much better game. We've seen it again before against Washington. So I think the Commanders are actually in a much worse spot than Minnesota is off that bad game. Their defenses, and especially those edge rushers, are going to want to, make up for a poor first game. And it's set up kind of nicely for them.
Well, because again, the tackles, like their right tackle gives up pressure. You can get him to the inside. Left tackle will either be a Cornelius Lucas or a rookie, or both, a combination of both. So,
sounds like a recipe for disaster for them, to be honest with you.
Like they're going to have to really design some things for Jaden Daniels and to be honest, get the run game going. That's where Dexter Lawrence and Okiriki at the linebacker guy. I love that guy. So
really good player.
Oh, he's really good. And so I think I agree with you. Like, this is not oh my gosh, he looked horrible. This is going to be, there's no such thing as an easy win when you're coming off a 4-13 season, or easy game. And when everything is so new. So I don't look at it like that this is I just think it's funny how it's always set up this way. Malik Neighbors, 5 for 66 in the opener. I know you were pretty high on him this summer. And so what's been your impressions of him, and what more can they need to do to get him become the playmaker that he was in college with Jaden? Well,
they just need their offense to run more efficiently. I mean, he got his targets. I think he finished with, 7 or 8? There at one point, he didn't get the ball early in the game. There was one point in the first or second quarter, right around maybe both. They actually went to him on 4 straight plays. So, like 4 straight targets. So they're going to try and get him the ball. He made an excellent catch down the field on one of them, sort of a back shoulder throw. It was actually a great throw by Daniel Jones, his best throw of the game by far. Maybe, it wasn't that it's that hard to pick from. But, I mean, Malik Neighbors is going to be a weapon. I think the Washington will have their hands full. I don't know. Giants move him around a lot. I don't know how Washington plans to handle that. But I'm not sure there's anyone there that if you match him up one-on-one against Malik Neighbors, it's going to be a matchup that you'd expect, Washington to get the best of throughout the afternoon. So, the Giants are going to keep throwing it to him. They're going to try to hit him downfield. They're going to try to get him the ball short. So he didn't get the ball on the first 2 or 3 possessions. They came out the next possession. They ran a sort of bootleg in his direction, tried to get him the ball right away. Like, these are the kind of things the Giants are going to try and do. Get the ball in his way in any way possible. Let him make plays. He can get open. I guarantee you, John, if you match up against him one-on-one and you say, just, see what you can do, he's going to get open.
Yeah, and I don't think they have the corners to stop a receiver of that like for him, potential caliber, but it certainly seems like he's got the skill set to be a special player in this league.
Yeah, he's strong, too. He's sneaky strong on top of being super explosive. So he's not a super skinny guy. Like, what's the cornerback? Forbes? Yes. Who's super skinny. Like, he'll have, Malik Neighbors could dominate him physically on top of the fact that he probably just run by him.
They would put St. Juiced on him, who's bigger. He covered Mike.
Yeah. I'm just saying in general, like, if you can't just, like, there's no, like, all right, we need this kind of cornerback on him because he's got, he's super skinny. This is his weakness. This is his strength. Right. Like, he's a pretty well-rounded guy. I think you're going to see him have a big year. You really are. He's going to get the ball a ton. He got a ton of targets. Not quite as much as Wan'Dale Robinson, who gets every dump down there is, but a lot of targets.
What the heat on Brian Daboll? This is a 3rd year. You have a game like that in the opener. I mean, I've covered this kind of stuff. You've covered this kind of stuff. When the locker room just starts to see like it's going to go that way again, and they just lose faith in what's going on. I know it's only one game, but where do you think the confidence level, the faith level in this coaching staff is?
I think this is a key few weeks for Brian Daboll because it's sort of felt like an extension of last year in the locker room. You could see there was just discontent from a lot of guys from a bunch of different reasons. That's my interpretation of what I saw in the locker room. And John, we've seen this how many times? A gazillion times. You've been in it a million times. I've been in it a million times. When the locker room's getting sour, right?
Yep.
To have that be the case in week 1 is pretty rare. Like, that's quick.
Yeah, it is.
Like, and I'm not saying it's, they turned against Brian Daboll. I don't actually think that, but I know there were some guys unhappy with their roles. There were some guys that are unhappy with the just continued losing, having to answer these questions. Like, that's like stuff reserved for usually week 15.
Right.
Not week 1.
Right.
So, yes, I think this team is kind of teetering, and if this goes wrong, they have a road game against Cleveland on deck, which is a very good defense, right? Then they play at home on a Thursday night against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this team is staring 0-4 in the face if they lose this game. So this game is monumental to Brian Daboll's tenure because I think, look, he's fine. So far, he's had one good year, one bad year, right? Fine. He made the playoffs, won the playoff game the first year. Things fell apart in the second year. That's fine. Everybody has bad years. But if this season is a total disaster, you've been around it a gazillion times. It's hard to survive at that point. If the fan base is so fed up and they booed the team on the second offense after the second offensive play, John, 2 plays into the season, that's where the fan base is.
Yeah, well, but the amazing thing is, like, again, this is like at least the 10th year in a row where it sounds like if the Giants don't win this game, it could be a free fall. And if player X doesn't do this, he could get benched. And then they always seem to find a way. Now, I guess we'll see how different this group is if they can come out and I don't want to say handle the business because I don't know where this is going for this team. You can see the Giants and like I covered that.
The one difference I'd say this year is that, look, it's a totally different Washington coaching staff, right? Correct. Dan Quinn has had success. Go look at what the Cowboys have done to Daniel Jones and the Giants over the years.
Good point.
They beat him up. So that is the difference when I look at it here is, okay, it is a different defense. It is a different scheme. And Dan Quinn at least has had some success against it. But from a distance, I'll say this. The Washington roster, and I don't think the Giants roster is very good either. I don't look at the Washington roster and think that they're in great shape. Like this is a pretty porous roster. And I think the supporting cast that they have around a rookie quarterback is troubling to me for the duration in the season, just because he's not set up for success.
There's a lot of work to do here.
He doesn't have great weapons, right? He doesn't have a great he has a bad offensive line, to be honest with you. I don't think there's any way around it. There's Brandon Thorne, who I respect on offensive line, has him as the 32nd worst offensive line in the NFL. Maybe not that bad, but they're in the bottom. They're near the bottom. That's a bad setup for a rookie quarterback.
Because they need him to be really good. And I do think like this is a roster that needs a lot. They knew coming in that this roster needed a lot of work. Like there are reasons they weren't as aggressive signing certain guys because they know they need to save resources for when they're actually ready and kind of build it organically. So there's a different approach. But last thing then, the off season, the hard knock stuff or all the inside stuff. There are definitely people that I talk to here like, I can't believe they allowed this to get on camera. How much is that coming back? Is that coming back to haunt them at all? Like, what do people say about like, what were you thinking? The Barkley stuff?
We loved it.
Oh, it was like from
reporters.
From a viewer's perspective, it's great. But from an organization perspective, it's like, what are they thinking?
Yes. The ironic part is John Mara for years has been anti-Hard Knocks. I keep putting his team on Hard Knocks. He once said years ago, he'll put the Giants will be on Hard Knocks over my dead body. Okay. And then we were like, okay, they're going to do this. They're going to show us nothing. And that'll be their way to kind of skirt finally being on Hard Knocks.
Right.
But in reality, they showed plenty. And I was actually very surprised. And they were very open about some things, including the quarterback. But I think they thought it was better to be honest than to try and hide what we all already knew. I was reporting about Drake May months ago.
Yes, you were.
Right? Yes. I said on my podcast multiple times that I thought they love Jaden Daniels. And as a matter of fact, he would probably be the guy that they would most want to get. And I still believe that. Like, I think that they were in love with Jaden Daniels. They knew they had no chance to get him.
Right.
But I do believe that Brian Daboll and company were in love with Jaden Daniels. I had heard that early. And just like I heard they loved Malik Neighbors too. And that look who they ended up drafting. Yeah. The bottom line is they couldn't get a quarterback. So it was sort of out of their hands, at least the top three guys. It was out of their hands. And I think they wanted to show that. And I think that's why we saw a lot of what we did with the Jaden Daniels and the Drake May. And they decided, what are we going to, why are we hiding this? It'll only be, it would only work against. Now, there are some things that you didn't see. You didn't see any discussion about J.J. McCarthy and the other quarterbacks. You think after the top 3 guys were available, they didn't have any discussions about the other guys?
Right, for sure.
Do we really think that?
No.
I know that there were a lot of serious discussions about J.J. McCarthy in that room. And there were some people who thought there might be a chance that they take him in the first round there, even, when they knew they couldn't trade up. But ultimately, they wanted the playmaker, and they got Malik Neighbors. But I was very surprised by that whole Hard Knocks and the way it played out and how open and honest they were. Now you're right; they're subject to criticism around the league, but the bottom line is you got to produce results. If they produce results, it doesn't matter. It all means nothing. If you get bombarded and blasted at home in your home opener by the Minnesota Vikings and don't beat the Commanders, and then start off 0-4 and sitting there 1-6, 1-7, yeah, it's going to come back to haunt them because everything they did is going to be used against them. I mean, I even saw people criticizing Brian Daboll yesterday in my mentions because, he's sitting there in meetings, which I thought was weird too. And he's, lounging with his feet on the table, like with his meetings with his boss. And you're like, dude, come on, man. And to me, it is weird and kind of shows a lack of self-awareness. So those little kind of things, they're all be used against them when it comes down to it. Like that's the reality of how this works.
No, I thought it was refreshingly honest, but it was almost like if you're an organization, it's like, is it too honest? But it is funny, and we'll get off after this, but like the part with Jaden where he asked him, do you want to be here? And Jay's like, yeah. But Jay, I'm sitting there, if I'm Jaden, I'm thinking, I'm not falling here and they're not trading the pick. So there's no chance of me getting here. So, but I still thought it was amusing, if nothing else. But like I could tell, like Jaden's thinking like, I'm not going to be here. Why are you asking me that? Like, I'm here to visit, but like, we both know I'm not coming here. So,
but they all do those visits.
Of
and
course.
I always wonder, like, why are you even doing it? Like, why are you wasting your time? You're going to get drafted in the top 3 no matter what. Who cares? Why even go? Like, no, thanks.
Yeah, no, it was.
But the guys do them. I don't know. So I guess it's a good experience for everybody. A team could collect information on these guys for the future. It helps there. And I guess everybody like kind of wins. He gets to go visit and he gets a free trip to New York.
Yeah, and if you're the Giants,
New Jersey, actually.
If you're the Giants, you're going to be facing this guy twice a year. So you may like him, but get to know him too, because maybe you pick up something in the interview that you can use against him on the field at some point in a way that, maybe he, whatever it is, I don't know. But like, it's always good to have information. So I get that. But anyway, Jordan, we'll see you Sunday for the next iteration of the NFC East Stepchildren Bowl. So thanks.
You think it's going to be a slop fest or what?
It'll be exciting. It's a home opener here, and it's Jaden Daniels' first game. At least, like you said, they're in the very, very, very initial stages of what is definitely a rebuild, no matter how they want to say it. And with the young quarterback that I think the fan base will really, really like. So I think from that standpoint, what you want for fans want is hope. And that right now he's providing hope. But there's a long way to go here. So we'll see. So anyways, Jordan, thanks a lot. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Saturday morning with 5 things I think. Talk to you next time.